Abhinavagupta was a philosopher, mystic and aesthetician from Kashmir. He was also considered an influential musician, poet, dramatist, exegeter, theologian, and logician, a polymathic personality who exercised strong influences on Indian culture. He was born in Kashmir in a family of scholars and mystics and studied all the schools of philosophy and art of his time under the guidance of as many as 15 teachers and gurus. In his long life he completed over 35 works, the largest and most famous of which is Drmaliktariq, an encyclopedic treatise on all the philosophical and practical aspects of trika and kaula. Another one of his very important contributions was in the field of philosophy of aesthetics with his famous Abhinavagupta commentary of Natyasastra Bharata Muni. Abhinavagupta's thought was strongly influenced by Buddhist logic. Life. Abhinavagupta was not his real name, rather a title he earned from his master, carrying a meaning of competence and authoritativeness. In his analysis, Jayartha, who was Abhinavagupta's most important commentator, also reveals 3 more meanings: being ever vigilant, being present everywhere, and protected by praises. Raniro Noli, the only Sanskrit scholar who completed a translation of Drmaliktariq in a European language, mentions that Abhinava also means new, as a reference to the ever-new creative force of his mystical experience. From Jayartha, we learn that Abhinavagupta was in possession of all the 6 qualities required for the recipients of the tremendous level of Saktipata, as described in the sacred texts: an unflinching faith in God, realization of mantras, control over objective principles, successful conclusion of all the activities undertaken, poetic creativity and spontaneous knowledge of all disciplines. Abhinavagupta's creation is well equilibrated between the branches of the triad: will, knowledge, action. His works also include devotional songs, academical, philosophical works and works describing ritual, yogic practices. As an author he is considered a systematizer of the philosophical thought. He reconstructed, rationalized and orchestrated the philosophical knowledge into a more coherent form, assessing all the available sources of his time, not unlike a modern scientific researcher of Indology. Various contemporary scholars have characterized Abhinavagupta as a brilliant scholar and saint, the pinnacle of the development of Kashmirism, and in possession of yogic realization. Social background, family and disciples. Magical birth. The term by which Abhinavagupta himself defines his origin is Jogini Bu, born of a yogini. In Kashmir Shaivism and especially in Kaula it is considered that a progeny of parents, established in the divine essence of Bhairava, is endowed with exceptional spiritual and intellectual prowess. Such a child is supposed to be the depository of knowledge, who, even as a child in the womb, has the form of Shiva. To enumerate but a few of the classical attributes of his kind. Parents. His mother, Vimala, died when Abhinavagupta was just 2 years old, as a consequence of losing his mother, of whom he was reportedly very attached. He grew more distant from worldly life and focused all the more on spiritual endeavor. The father, Narasimhagupta, after his wife's death favored an ascetic lifestyle, while raising his 3 children. He had a cultivated mind and a heart, outstandingly adorned with devotion to Mahasvara. He was Abhinavagupta's first teacher, instructing him in grammar, logic and literature. Family. Abhinavagupta had a brother and a sister. The brother, Manorada, was a well-versed devotee of Shiva. His sister, Amba, devoted herself to worship after the death of her husband in late life. His cousin Kana demonstrated even from his youth that he grasped the essence of Ibism and was detached of the world. His wife was presumably Abhinavagupta's older sister Amba, who looked with reverence upon her illustrious brother. Amba and Kana had a son, Jogeshvari Datta, who was precociously talented in yoga. Abhinavagupta also mentions his disciple Ramadeva as faithfully devoted to scriptural study and serving his master. Another cousin was Ksema, possibly the same as Abhinavagupta's illustrious disciple Kasmaraja. Mandra, a childhood friend of Karna, was their host in a suburban residence. He was not only rich and in possession of a pleasing personality, but also equally learned. And last but not least, Vathosika, Mandra's aunt, who got a special mention from Abhinavagupta for caring for him with exceptional dedication and concern. To express his gratitude, Abhinavagupta declared that Vathosika deserved the credit for the successful completion of his work. The emerging picture here is that Abhinavagupta lived in a nurturing and protected environment, where his creative energies got all the support they required. Everyone around him was filled with spiritual fervor and had taken Abhinavagupta as their spiritual master. Such a supporting group of family and friends was equally necessary as his personal qualities of genius. To complete a work of the magnitude of Tantraloka, Ancestors by Abhinavagupta's own account, his most remote known ancestor was called Attribution, born in Madhya Pradesh. Manusmriti defines the Madhya Pradesh region as vast plains between Himalaya and Vindhya mountains, and to the east of the river Vinasana and to the west of Praya. Born in India, he travelled to Kashmir at the request of the king Lalitaditya, around year 740 CE. Masters. Abhinavagupta is famous for his voracious thirst of knowledge. To study he took many teachers, both mystical philosophers and scholars. He approached Vaishnavas, Buddhists, Vedantarivists and the Trika scholars. Among the most prominent of his teachers he enumerates four: Vamanatha, who instructed him in dualistic Ivism, and Bhuttaraja in the dualist, non-dualist school. Besides being the teacher of the famous Abhinavagupta, Bhuttaraja was also the father of two eminent scholars. Laxmasnagupta, a direct disciple of Somananda, in the lineage of Trayambaka, was highly respected by Abhinavagupta and taught him all the schools of monistic thought, Kramatrika and Pratyabhijna. Ambunatha taught him the fourth school. This school is in fact Kaula, and it was emanated from Trayambaka's daughter. For Abhinavagupta, Ambunatha was the most admired guru. Describing the greatness of his master, he compared Ambunatha with the sun, in his power to dispel ignorance from the heart, and, in another place, with the moon shining over the ocean of Trika knowledge. Abhinavagupta received Kaula initiation through Ambunatha's wife. The energy of this initiation is transmitted and sublimated into the heart and finally into consciousness. Such a method is difficult but very rapid and is reserved for those who shed their mental limitations and are pure. It was Ambunatha who requested of him to write Tantraloka. As guru, he had a profound influence in the structure of Tantraloka and in the life of its creator, Abhinavagupta. As many as 12 more of his principal teachers are enumerated by name but without details. It is believed that Abhinavagupta had more secondary teachers. Moreover, during his life he had accumulated a large number of texts from which he quoted in his magnum opus, in his desire to create a synthetic, all-inclusive system, where the contrasts of different scriptures could be resolved by integration into a superior perspective. Lifestyle. Abhinavagupta remained unmarried all his life. We do however know him to be an adept of Kaula and as such, used his energy as a vital force, a constant source of Shakti to power the spiritual nervous system he outlined in his works. This system involves ritual union between Purushas and Shakti, yet this union is essentially non-physical and universal, and thus for a master such as Abhinavagupta, he was always in communion with Shiva Shakti. We can only speculate about whether he was physically chaste, and either answer to this question is not very meaningful in the context of his life and teachings. Abhinavagupta parallels Shiva as both ascetic and enjoyer. He studied assiduously at least until the age of 30 or 35, and to do that he travelled, but mostly inside Kashmir. By his own testimony, he had attained spiritual liberation through his Kaula practice, under the guidance of his most admired master, Ambunatha. He lived in his home with his family members and disciples, and he did not become a wandering monk, nor did he take on the regular duties of his family. Thus, Abhinavagupta lived out his life as a writer and a teacher. His personality was a living realization of his vision. In an epoch pen painting he is depicted seated in Virasana, surrounded by devoted disciples and family, performing a kind of trance-inducing music at Veena while dictating verses of Tantraloka to one of his attendees, behind him two Duta waiting on him. A legend about the moment of his death says that he took with him 1,200 disciples and marched off to a cave, reciting his poem Bhairavastava, a devotional work. They were never to be seen again, supposedly translating together in the spiritual world. Works. Abhinavagupta's works fall into multiple sections: manuals of religious ritual, devotional songs, philosophical works and philosophy of aesthetics. Here are enumerated most of his works. Bold typeface titles represent the most important ones. Religious works. Tantraloka. His most important work was Tantraloka. Lock or look, here, transliterates into, to throw light on Tantra, a synthesis of all the Trika system. Its only complete translation in a European language, Italian, is credited to Raniero Noli, now at its second edition. The Esoteric Chapter 29 on the Kaula ritual was translated in English together with Jayaratha's commentary by John R. Dupush, Rev. Dr. A complex study on the context, authors, contents and references of Tantraloka was published by Navjivan Rastogi, professor of the Lucknow University. Though there are no English translations of Tantraloka to date, the last recognized master of the oral tradition of Kashmir Shaivism, Swami Laxmanju, gave a condensed version of the important philosophical chapters of Tantraloka in his book, Kashmir Shaivism, The Secret Supreme. Another important text was the commentary on Paratrijika, Paratristika Vivarana, detailing the signification of the phonetic energies and their two sequential ordering systems, Makha and Malini. This was the last great translation project of Jadavar Singh. Tantrasara is a summarized version, in prose, of Tantraloka, which was once more summarized in Tantrakaya, and finally presented in a very short summary form under the name of Tantravatadanika, the seed of Tantra. Purvapansika was a commentary of Purva Tantra, alias Malanivajaya Tantra, lost to this day. Malanivajaya Vartika is a versified commentary on Malanivajaya Tantra's first verse. Kramakeli, Krama's play, was a commentary of Kramastotra, now lost. Bhagavad Gita Samgraha, which translates commentary on Bhagavad Gita, has now an English translation by Boris Marjanovic. Other religious works are Paratrijika Lahuvti, a short commentary on Paratrijika, Payantupinkashika, Rahasya Pankadozika, Lakva Prakriya, Devistotra Vivarana and Paramarthasara. Devotional hymns. Abhinavagupta has composed a number of devotional poems, most of which have been translated into French by Lillian Silburn. Bodhapan Sadhozika, 15 verses on consciousness. Paramarthakaka, discussion on the supreme reality. Anubhavanivadana, tribute of the inner experience. Anuttarastika, 8 verses on Anuttara. Krama Stotra, an hymn, different from the fundamental text of the Krama school. Bhairavastava, hymn to Bhairava. Dhestadavartakakra Stotra, hymn to the wheel of divinities that live in the body. Paramarthadvadizika, 12 verses on the supreme reality, and Mahopadesa Vimsartika, 20 verses on the great teaching. Another poem, Evasakti Abhinavagupta Stotra, hymn on the inseparability of Shiva and Shakti, was lost. Philosophical works. One of the most important works of Abhinavagupta is Svara Pratyabhijna Vimarsini and Svara Pratyabhijna Vivata Vimarsini. This treatise is fundamental in the transmission of the Pratyabhijna school to our days. Another commentary on a Pratyabhijna work of Adstyalokana is now lost. Another lost commentary is Padartha Pravsanirnayatika and Prakyamkavivarana, referring to the 3rd chapter of Vakyapadiyya of Bhartrihari. Two more philosophical texts of Abhinavagupta are Katha Mukatilaka and Bedavada Vidarana. Poetical and dramatic works. Abhinavagupta's most important work on the philosophy of art is Abhinavabharati, a long and complex commentary on Natya Shastra of Bharata Muni. This work has been one of the most important factors contributing to Abhinavagupta's fame up until present day. His most important contribution was that to the theory of rasa. Other poetical works include Gatikapara Kulakavivta, a commentary on Gatikapara of Kalidasar, Kavyakauta Kavivarana, a commentary to the wonder of poetry, now lost, and Devanulokalokana, illustration of Devanuloka, which is a famous work of Anandavardhana.